Flowers and chocolate for girls is like naked pics for guys. Hello, I'm Martin. I've been a dating and relationship coach for over 17 years. And today I'm going to talk about romantic gestures and why they are so important for relationships. So we have romantic gestures like the traditional flowers, chocolate, nice dinners, jewelry, and all of this stuff is stuff that guys do for girls. So what about the romantic gestures that girls do for guys? Oh, wait a minute. There aren't any. Okay, but before we talk about the details of that, I want to talk about why these kinds of gestures are important. Now, in a relationship, especially a long-term relationship where you spend a lot of time with one another, there's a lot of things that are like just routine things that have to get done in life that you two do together, whether it's filling up the car with gas or paying the bills or going to run errands. And these things are not particularly fun. They're just things that need to get done for life to happen. And because you have a relationship with this person and you spend a lot of time with them, you end up often doing many of these things together. And so these are not things that really add to the relationship in the sense of they don't bring you two closer together in general. Obviously, during the time that these things are happening, it's possible that there are moments that happen in the course of these routine things that do bring you closer together. But in general, those activities in and of themselves don't really build the relationship, especially over a long span of time. Early on in a relationship, when you're getting started, doing these sorts of things can, because you have this shared experience, and sometimes you kind of learn something unique or interesting about the other person from that experience, because it's a very kind of private thing. You can often learn something about someone's family from doing these kind of really basic errands. But over time, it's just things that need to get done. So those things, as I was saying, they don't really add to the relationship, and generally they don't really detract from the relationship. They just suck up time, basically. And because we spend a lot of time doing those kind of activities when we're in a relationship, and also negotiating around things that aren't really important for the relationship but just need to get done in terms of, let's say, logistically. Logistically meaning, let's say that if you live together and you're going to go out to have dinner with your friends, and then you are maybe going to meet up with your guy later, or vice versa. You're going to meet up with your guy friends for dinner, and then you're going to meet up with your girl after, let's say. Then, there's kind of logistics that have to be discussed and worked out. Are you going to go and pick her up? Are you guys going to meet somewhere? Whatever. These kinds of discussions have to happen. And once again, a lot of relationship time gets sucked up by these sort of logistical considerations. And so those don't generally make anyone in the relationship feel really special or important or like they really matter. They just feel like this is a routine that they do, and then, they just do it. And so the gestures are important because they tell the other person that they are important enough for you to go out of your way at least a little bit for them. Now, we have the opportunity to give all sorts of gestures all the time, whether it's offering your partner a massage, or washing them in the shower, or, there's any number of small gestures that we can engage in that show that we value our partner. Now, there's a contrast, though, between those gestures that I just gave examples of and these gestures like flowers and chocolate. And the difference is that the flowers and chocolate have a symbolic meaning in addition to the personal meaning. So they're symbolic because in Western culture, and this practice is spread to many other cultures, in Western culture, giving flowers and chocolate on Valentine's Day or on a birthday or on Mother's Day are designated societal ways to show that that other person matters. Now, I'm not saying that you absolutely have to do these things. You don't have to. Every relationship can have its own rules. But if you choose not to do them, you should understand that your girl will experience a certain kind of, let's say, negative valence. It's not really bad, but like slightly negative feeling around the fact that you're not willing to do what is considered something small. Now, it's fine. You might make up for it in lots of other ways, but that's the key, is that you generally will have to make up for it in other ways. And that's partially because one of the things is that if she's not getting those gestures, those expected gestures, then she's likely to get pressure or pushback from her friends and family who are going to say, oh, why didn't Jonathan get you flowers on Valentine's Day? Or why didn't Jonathan take you out for a nice dinner on Valentine's Day? Now, you can have your reasons, Valentine's dinner is expensive, and all the restaurants charge exorbitant prices, and sure, I understand that. And part of the gesture is that you were willing to spend that extra money, that you took money from something else that you could have spent it on, the new graphics card you wanted for your computer or whatever, and you used it for this dinner. That's part of the gesture, is that the understanding that you had to make some kind of sacrifice elsewhere to be able to carry through this gesture. And sure, it's like I said, it's totally possible that you can negotiate with your girl around not doing that, around saying, hey, why don't we celebrate Valentine's Day on a different day or whatever. And then maybe you spend Valentine's Day at home and you do something, a more private gesture at home. So, maybe you run her a bubble bath with, some special aromatic bubble whatever thing on Valentine's Day. And then you take her out for dinner to a nice place that maybe is more expensive than you would usually go to, or more special than you would usually go to on a day that isn't Valentine's Day. That's totally fine, because even then your girl will be able to explain what she did on Valentine's Day and she'll have something to show for it. Okay, and if you decide not to do anything for Valentine's Day, you tell her you're philosophically against Valentine's Day and you refuse to celebrate it. Okay, that you can do that. But as I said, she's going to get a certain kind of pressure. Even if she agrees to a certain extent, she's still going to be unhappy that she is not getting the same level of treatment as other people are getting. Now, I mentioned in another video, it's perfectly possible that these other people are having a terrible relationship the other 350 days of the year that aren't holidays. Definitely, possibly true. Often true. But that's not going to be the way she's thinking about in that moment. In that moment, she's going to be thinking, oh, even my friend's jerk of a boyfriend took her out for Valentine's Day, and my boyfriend didn't do anything for me. So you have to consider that. So that's why these symbolic gestures, even though they may be meaningless to you personally and to her personally, they still have societal meaning. Just like holding the door open for someone has societal meaning of kindness and consideration for your fellow human being on the planet. It's not that they can't open the door themselves. I mean, unless they're someone who actually can open the door for themselves. But if they're someone who can open the door for themselves, obviously there's no reason to hold the door open for them. But we do as a symbolic gesture of kindness and courtesy. And so in that way, this fits a similar pattern. Now, what's interesting is, of course, there are myriad of these sorts of gestures for men to do for women. And there are not nearly as many, or maybe there aren't any, for women to do for men. You can even use Mother's Day is an example where Mother's Day is a really big holiday, and Father's Day, not so much. Now, obviously, every family celebrates differently, but Mother's Day, there's Mother's Day brunch, and people go out for this sort of thing, and it's kind of a, it's a much bigger holiday than Father's Day. Now, I know what people are going to say, oh, well, we don't need Father's Day because most of these motherfuckers aren't fathers anyway, so, right? Well, that would suggest actually that when you have a good father, you should celebrate it even more, right? I mean, that's really what that should suggest. Not that men don't deserve it because so many men are poor fathers, right? I mean, it's like, presumably you should celebrate when it's really special and unique. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I would say that on the reverse side, when men aren't really interested in romantic gestures, and that's a large part because our relationships are not as important publicly. So, there's proverbially always how men don't talk about their relationships much with their guy friends, right? Because, that's their primary social group is going to be their other male friends. And the other male friends generally aren't that interested in each other's relationship. I mean, at a very basic level, like, oh, how's everything going with Tiffany or whatever? Oh, yeah, it's good. Okay, great. That'll be about the end of it for most of them, unless there's some problem in the relationship. If everything is fine, then not too much of interest to say. Because relationships or men's romantic relationships are not such an important part of their core social image, society hasn't created or hasn't made the same type of symbolic gestures necessary. However, gestures are still important. And I would say that a lot of the important gestures are things like girls sending naked pics. I was visiting my sister and I was spending a few days hanging out with her and her family. And a girl that I was seeing was sending me some tit pics and some naked pics. And my sister was stunned. She was like, whoa, I can't believe she's doing that. And I was like, well, she knows it makes me happy and it'll make me think about her while, I'm away. And she said, oh, my husband would love that. And I was like, well, then why don't you do it? Like, it just seems obvious. Like, if you know your husband would love that, why don't you just do it? And it's really funny because women would say, well, I don't want to do that. And keep in mind, she's married. She's married and she thinks her husband would be into it. Now, I think that a lot of guys who are not married would think, well, why would you be into that from your wife? You see her every day. But I think the reason is because when you see your wife every day, you lose a lot of the sexual tension that exists when you spend less time together. And the time that you spend together tends to be a lot less sexually charged, especially when there's kids around, because, you don't tend to have a lot of sexual energy, especially when the kids are young. So, parents tend to shy away from bringing out that sexual side of themselves in the presence of their kids. And so that becomes very muted. And of course, the kids are around a lot. And so this is a way to bring that sexuality out. And, a lot of women feel like their boyfriends, their husbands are not interested enough in them. And they also think that they shouldn't have to use their sexuality to generate or to get the attention from their boyfriends or husbands that they want. Now, I don't really have a strong opinion about this. To me, it doesn't matter what you think you should deserve or should get. It's like, well, look, if you're not getting what you want from your relationship and there's something you could do that you're not doing, then shouldn't you just do that? I don't understand people going around going, well, I don't want to do that. It's like, yeah, well, that's what relationships are like. If you're going to go through life with another person as a part of it, and this is the same, this goes with children too, you have to do a bunch of stuff you don't want to do. I know of a woman who last night, she had to take her daughter to the hospital at, I don't know, maybe it was like 11 p.m. or something, because she suddenly got like a bloody nose or something like this. And does she want to be at the hospital at 11 at night on a Saturday? Probably not. But if you're going to have people in your life, you're going to have to do things that you don't want to do. And you can't say, well, she shouldn't get a bloody nose right now. It's like, well, you don't get to decide that. And here's the thing, though, about kids is that kids kind of can't leave. So it's actually even more important with your partner that you take the time and take the energy to do these things that are gestures for your partner, because your partner can leave and will leave if they're not satisfied, regardless of what you think you ought to do. Now, is it possible that maybe you have a partner that has too high expectations? It's possible. In that case, you need to figure that out a lot sooner. That's all I could say about that. And I know it's not as easy as that, but here's the thing is that you have your choice. Do what's necessary to make your relationship work, or don't, and you lose the time and energy that you've already put in. And yes, maybe you get something out of the relationship, but that's all there is to it. And I'm shocked by the number of things women will say that they don't want to do or refuse to do. And I'm not saying that guys aren't the same way. Obviously, guys also have plenty of things that they don't want to do. But unlike women, guys have a certain societal pressure that requires them essentially to behave in certain ways, or at least traditionally to behave in certain ways, and still to this day, behave in certain ways that show that their partner is important. And in that way, women don't have those. And in fact, you could argue that a lot of the sexual revolution has been removing a lot of the things that women were traditionally expected to do as gestures to show they cared about their husband or their boyfriend. So for me, when I think about this stuff, I just understand that in any relationship, for any relationship to work, you're going to have to spend a lot of time doing things you don't want to do. And when you stop to do those things, you can see it's common that relationships degrade and can degrade slowly or rapidly. In the book, How to Stay in Love by John Sexton, who recently came out with this book last year, I think, or maybe the year before, and he did the podcast circuit. And the book is really good and I enjoyed it, and I found myself nodding along with a lot of the things that he said. He talks about one of his clients who he asked, when did you know that your marriage was on its way out? And she said, he stopped buying my favorite cereal and I stopped giving him blowjobs. And I think that this is a great example of the difference between men and women. For women, it's, a gesture like buying her favorite cereal and always making sure that she has it that shows that you're thinking about her and that she's important enough to you, that she's always in your mind and that you're thinking about her happiness. And then for guys, it's often sexual. And obviously, I'm not a woman, but it's very clear that women have a lot of, I don't know if the word is negative emotion or anxiety. I don't think it's anxiety is not really the word, but they resist. That's maybe a way to say it. They resist having to use their sexual nature or their sexuality to hold on to their partner's attention. And I understand that women feel they don't want to be a sex object. Well, that's fine that you don't want to be a sex object, but you should understand that that is an important part of your nature. For men, that's an important part of your nature, and that it's an important part of what guys are looking for or need or think is important in a partner in a relationship. And for you guys out there, I think it's important for you to understand, and I always say this in my seminars, that the more your woman knows that you respect her for her qualities, her non-sexual qualities, her intellectual qualities, her abilities, etc., the more she feels that you respect her in that way, the more willing and eager even she will be to be a sexual object with you. And so that's another key aspect of why these gestures are very important for you as guys. Now, I understand that many guys, they feel they do all of this stuff and their woman is still not sexually interested in them. And I've talked about that in some other videos, so I won't go into that now, but you can go in and have a look at some of the other videos where I do discuss that. But it's important for everyone to understand that these gestures are really key to holding a relationship together.